This NBA superstar is on the brink of throwing away his career after being seen on IG Live for the second time in just 2 months waving a gun. But what caught my eye was the NBA commissioner's reaction.
As you said, he's a star. I mean, he has an incredibly huge following. Honestly, I was shocked.
Now, I don't think we should actually be as surprised as Adam says. In this week's Soft Skills Spotlight, there were 4 clues from this ESPN interview after the first gun incident that I picked up as a communication coach that signaled Ja Morant wasn't nearly as remorseful for his actions as we thought. Let's see if you can spot the first clue.
I feel mentally good that I haven't, been in, many years since I, really got drafted to the league. I'm in a space where I'm, very comfortable. I took those, days to be able to learn, different ways to, manage stress in a positive way.
The key is not addressing the apology head on. It doesn't matter what the interview's question is. You need to get out in front of the narrative. What he should have done is what Shannon Sharpe did after making a scene at the Los Angeles Lakers game.
Friday night at the Lakers game, I want to apologize for my behavior. And I take full responsibility for what transpired. It does not matter what Dillon Brooks said or how many times he said it. Me being the responsible person, me having the platform that I have, and having so many people look up to me, I was wrong.
Now, there were 2 things that would have made Ja Morant's apology seem more heartfelt instead of insincere. The first is referencing a specific incident that caused the controversy. You don't have to over-elaborate on it, but you should reference a specific detail that clearly indicates what you're talking about. The second is expressing remorse up front. Regardless of whether the interviewer asked the question, you need to address the elephant in the room because they're going to be more receptive to listening to you. What I struggled with more, though, was what Ja had the audacity to say next.
I'm a totally different person, than what's been shown, in the media. That's my job now. That's why I took that time away to, become a better Ja, so everybody really can, see who Ja really is and, what he's about.
Now, you might think that talking in third person is incredibly narcissistic, but what's more telling about Ja's statement is that he's psychologically distancing himself from a painful situation. Now, talking to oneself in third person is a very common behavior for people who are stressed. Research bears this out. When you're stressed, talking like this actually is how we gain emotional control over our own problems. You'll even notice LeBron James did this in 2010 when he announced his decision to move from the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Miami Heat.
There were places where they were burning your jersey. How do you feel about it?
Well, I mean, I can't get involved in that. One thing that I didn't want to do is make an emotional decision, and I wanted to do what was best for LeBron James and what LeBron James is going to do to make him happy.
For LeBron, the reporter's question provokes him to distance himself from his fan base that suddenly turned on him, which would be at minimum hurtful and more likely traumatic for anyone to handle. And it's actually highly effective, particularly before you're about to get on stage and deliver a nerve-wracking speech. But in Ja Morant's case, this is a prime example of someone who's not ready to face the underlying root cause behind his actions and rather focus on cleaning up his public image. Now, there's one subtle clue that goes unnoticed because it's not actually about what Ja says with his words. Compare these 2 clips.
Do you take pride in being a role model?
I do. And, I realize, I have a lot of kids, who look up to me, even, probably some adults, a lot of fans. And I realize, my past mistakes isn't being, a good role model.
Now listen to what Ja Morant says here.
When it got rough and, I pretty much just let it all build up, and that's why I felt like I needed my time away to better myself and become a more healthy Ja.
The key clue is that his tone doesn't match what he's saying. Now, why is that? He's speaking in a monotone. When you speak in a monotone, it's often a dead giveaway that you're not connected to the emotion that you truly feel, because otherwise your tone will naturally come out. Compare how Ja spoke earlier to how the commissioner spoke about Ja after the second gun incident.
My concern, and I thought he shared with me, that millions, if not tens of millions of kids globally would see him as having done something that was celebrating in a way. That act of using a firearm in that fashion.
The commissioner's tone goes from high to low, which clearly indicates that he feels betrayed, even though he doesn't actually say it with his words. And we've all said things that have been misinterpreted by others. And more often than not, it's because our tone unintentionally sets the other person off. Now, to have more control over it, consider these 2 exercises. The first is what I call the vocal slide. Simply say the word "hey," but say it from a tone going high to low and then low to high, like this. Hey, hey. The second exercise is the number scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 3, 5. 5, 3, 1. It takes time to get the hang of it. So I recommend practicing these two exercises daily while also just trying to speak more from the heart. Go back to those experiences that you felt and just speak as though you were reliving those moments. You'll be surprised at how quickly you'll be able to adapt your vocal tone just to match your emotion, and people will feel that. Now, the last clue is the nail in the coffin, showing just how insincere he is during this interview, even when he doesn't intend it.
Whose gun were you holding?
Well, the gun wasn't mine. It's not who I am. I don't condone any type of violence, but I take full responsibility for my actions.
Notice how Ja's shaking his head as he's saying things like, I don't condone any type of violence. And he clearly nods his head to, I take full responsibility. Now, these are examples of what you say matching with your gestures and your head motions. This is what we call congruent messaging. And doing this is critical because it makes you come off as credible and genuine to others. But when Ja said, the gun wasn't mine, notice how relative to his other head shakes, this one is much more subtle. Based on this, it's inconclusive whether the gun actually was his. But if it weren't, I think judging off other instances when he clearly believes what he says, here he should be vehemently shaking his head at the false accusation in denial. Now, this is an example of mismatching gestures with your message, and it's a signal of lying. Watch carefully to see if you can spot the mismatch when former President Bill Clinton says this.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people.
Now with Clinton, there are two signs of lying. The first is Bill Clinton never shakes his head when he says, I did not have sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky. But he does shake his head when he says, I never told anybody to lie, which is likely true, but not shaking his head is incongruent with his denial. The second is, notice how he's looking to the left while pointing to the right. Ja Morant's interview gave us important clues that his heart just wasn't where his mouth was. And if your heart's not in it, you just can't fake your way into sounding genuine. But one of the world's top comedians did exactly the opposite, giving such a heartfelt speech about his dear friend that made the audience give him a standing ovation. Check out what he did and why it worked so well right here.